It is crazy to think that we turned this watermelon into these pickles. Welcome back to the Fermentation Adventure. This week we are taking this beautiful watermelon and we are making lacto-fermented watermelon rind pickles infused with a garlic onion flavor. Wow!
Today we're going to show you how to use the entire fruit. Of course, we're thinking of this sweet fruit you can eat around the pool during summertime. But what about all of this rind? This rind is so crispy and thick that when you ferment it, it actually retains its crispiness. It's really going to taste like a dill pickle. But I actually like this version better.
Dill pickle just gets a little soft and mushy.
Yeah.
That's not fun. These actually stay crisp. And when you slice these up and put these on a hamburger or even just have them alone, they're so good. Join us on this journey to explore the world of fermentation.
If you'd like to learn how to make ferments like these, start now by clicking subscribe and hitting that bell so you don't miss a thing.
Let's get right into the recipe. The first ingredient is watermelon.
Watermelon!
We're gonna slice one round about 2 inches wide. We found just about that size fits into a 1-quart mason jar. If you have a large one or a smaller one, it might be just slightly different. But if you have a lot of watermelon, we might want to make these in like a half-gallon size mason jar, maybe even a gallon size if you really like these. It's a lot of watermelon pickles.
And that's a lot of watermelon rind that normally gets wasted.
So let's cut our round. Ooh, baby. Look at that beautiful watermelon inside. So now we're just gonna remove the flesh, put that in the refrigerator, and maybe we'll have a watermelon rum drink or some kind of fruit cocktail, who knows?
That's actually really good.
Really good,
Yeah.
especially with mint. So the easiest way to separate the fruit from the rind is to cut it into quarters.
Now that it's quartered, we're gonna take all of the pink flesh right out of here and put it into another container to eat later. And you wanna be sure to get as close to the white part as you can, but it's okay if there's still a little bit of pink.
She can't help but eat while we're filming this, every single time.
It's just too good. The next step is we have to peel these. And when you have these quarter pieces, it kind of makes it easy to do that. I have a peeler, and it's just a matter of holding it like this, and you just peel right off the side here. But you want to make sure you take off enough of that outer layer. In a sense, you're really removing 2 layers. You want to peel enough to where you get to the white part. You can tell it's a little bit lighter in color. This takes off a lot less than if you were to have cut into it.
This is a serious treat in Florida, because in Florida we have watermelons like crazy around midsummer, around June.
And they're so cheap. They're at the farmer's market, and you know we love our farmer's market, huge ones, and they'll sell them for $2.
Crazy.
Oh my goodness. One more?
That's bigger than you. I mean, forever we were just throwing these away. And we came across pickling watermelon rind. We thought, wow. So then years ago we started pickling them, and I think I might even like them just a little bit better than regular dill pickles because they just stay crisp. We have all of our watermelon rinds ready to go. Now we're gonna cut these into little squares or rectangles. If you just stand these up, they just take up a lot of space.
They're too round.
Yeah, so we want to be able to Tetris these into the jar. They can be a little bit hard to cut. I mean, it's a little tougher than what a cucumber would be. These are just so beautiful. We have our pile of watermelon rinds. We're gonna set these to the side, and the next ingredient is garlic. We need 4 cloves of garlic, depending on how spicy you like it. I like to cut the ends off, and then I smash them. It makes it a lot easier to get the skins off. The peels come right off. Wow, I can smell that garlic. That is so strong. And we're putting this at the bottom of the mason jar, so we need a 1-quart mason jar.
All right, I've got a mason jar right here.
The reason we're putting this on the bottom of the jar is because when we put all the other ingredients, we want anything that could possibly float on the bottom, so it'll be weighed down. The third ingredient is the onion. We are using 1/4 of an onion. We want a nice, robust flavor. If you really don't like onion, you could leave this out. I also just like to slice off any little imperfections. We don't want any kind of spoilage in the jar. It makes it a lot more susceptible to mold. Now we're going to want to cut these into slices. It makes it a lot easier with a pair of tongs to grab these. If you cut them into little bits, you're not going to be able to get those out except with like a spoon. We're going to put these into the bottom of the jar along with the garlic.
We also want to put our spices at the bottom of the jar. And that way they kind of stay underneath the brine throughout the process. Our first spice we're gonna add some dried dill, and we're going to use a half a tablespoon of that.
If you're using fresh dill, you want to use double this amount.
We're also going to add 1 teaspoon of mustard seed.
That just adds a little bit of spiciness, like an interesting little tangy flavor.
And now for spice, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of some dried peppercorns. Woo, that's spicy.
Oh yeah, this is what you would normally find in a pepper grinder.
That's starting to look like a really good mix in there.
Now that we have all of our spices and aromatic ingredients, we need to get all of these watermelon pieces into this mason jar. It's gonna be a little bit tricky. We gotta Tetris these in. Now once the jar starts filling up, you gotta give it a little bit of a shake. You have little gaps on the sides that'll start forming. You wanna squeeze some of the watermelon pieces into there. This is where the Tetris part starts coming in.
Just don't push too hard, of course, because we don't want to break the jar.
Don't want to break the jar.
It looks like we may have too much watermelon rind. I believe we actually cut a round that was a little bit thicker than the 2 inches we were going for. If you need them to fit at the top, we may need to cut a few pieces just to make them a little smaller so they fit a little better. About right?
But I could do one more.
One more?
I'm pushing it.
Hey!
That's probably good.
That's a good tight fit.
So now that we have everything into the jar, we want to cover this with our salt brine. Now this is the old-fashioned way, so we're not going to put any kind of vinegar in this at all. We're making our own vinegar, which is lacto-fermentation. Now the lactic acid bacteria, the lactobacilli, they're going to eat all of these sugars and produce lactic acid, which tastes like vinegar. So now we need our salt brine. And for a 1 quart mason jar, we are going to use 1.5 tablespoons of salt per 2 cups of water.
You can also use a little bit less or a little bit more salt depending on your taste. And it's important, of course, to use the non-chlorinated water because we don't want to kill off the good bacteria that's fermenting. 2 cups. And we're just going to stir to dissolve. All right, that looks completely dissolved. So now we're ready to pour it right into our mason jar. And you can see we filled it just to the neck or under the neck of the jar. We definitely had too much water. It looks like we used a little more than a cup only. The next step is we have to weigh everything down.
If you have anything that comes above the brine level and gets exposed to the air, you might end up getting mold, and we don't want mold.
We don't want mold, that's for sure.
We've switched to these little glass fermentation weights that are really handy. They have almost kind of like a curved bottom and a little handle on there, so you can hold it just like that and insert it right into the mouth of the jar.
And make sure that everything stays in the brine and under the water level to make sure that it ferments properly.
And if you'll notice, when I put the weight in there, the brine level didn't actually come up anymore, so we probably want to add just a little bit more brine to the top of that. And now that the fermentation weight is in the jar and submerging everything below the brine, we want to add the lid on top of it. We have special fermentation lids for this.
I really like these lids. And today we're going to use a pink one because we're dealing with watermelon.
There are multiple colors. These are made of silicone and they have this little nipple on top. So all we have to do is pop that right on the top of it. And then we take a little ring and then screw that down. Now what happens is as the lactic acid bacteria are breaking down the sugars, they push up all the oxygen and the oxygen comes out of that little nipple and it creates an environment that's happy for your ferment. Now if you're interested in the fermentation lid and the fermentation weights that we love the most, we'll put links below in the show notes, so check those out. Okay, our jar is ready for the fermentation process.
And how many days should these ferment on the counter?
This can be anywhere between 3 and 7 days, kind of like dill pickles. You would think of like a half sour or a full sour, depends on what you like.
We're gonna follow these watermelon rind pickles through the fermentation process, and we're gonna see what it looks like every day so you know what to expect when you make this at home.
After 48 hours, we're not seeing too much change. The brine isn't cloudy yet, but we're already starting to see a few bubbles.
Hey guys, it's been 3 days on these watermelon rind pickles, so let's check them out. Don't think they're quite ready, but I want to give it a taste test. After 3 days, the brine is starting to look a little cloudy. We're still seeing bubbles, and we're starting to see some sediment at the bottom of the jar. It smells just like a pickle. Already on day 3, it's a little softer. All right, let's see. I'd say it's at least a half sour pickle taste right now. We're gonna check it out tomorrow.
After 4 days, there's a good amount of white sediment at the bottom of the jar, which is a normal yeast byproduct of the fermentation process. We are back after the fermentation process and we have a side-by-side comparison for you. Now these we had just created And these have been fermenting for 4 days. The color is very striking in between the two. One that's been fermenting for 4 days, it's getting a little bit cloudy and there's still just the tiniest bit of bubbles coming up.
After 3 days, the fermentation process on these watermelon rind pickles were pretty much done. But we let them go 1 more day because we wanted to intensify the flavor, and I'm ready for a taste test because I think these are ready.
Wow, it doesn't get more perfect than that. When you look at the top layer, it is absolutely perfect. There is no calm yeast at all. Now, last week, if you remember from the fermented carrots, we had a whole layer of calm yeast on there. You want to check that video out. It was pretty impressive.
Now we're going to do a taste test to know for sure if we're going to stop the fermentation process at 4 days.
All right.
Ready?
I'm so ready.
Wow, that looks really good. We're just going to cut this into slices. Okay, I'm so excited. Moment of truth.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Delicious.
The flavor just keeps coming.
This tastes like a dill pickle.
And once these are done fermenting, and the taste is the way you like it, they'll stay good in the fridge for a very long time.
If you're gonna leave it for a long time though, make sure to put a little sticker with a date on it because you might forget when you put it in there. For more awesome recipes like these, be sure to subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Give us a like and get out there and create some culture. Okay.
You love me that much?
That much.